or to the cloud. Well, here we are, guys. Welcome back to the Leader Collective. And I'm super, super excited and honored to have all of our members and some incredible guests on this call today, Brian Clark and Creighton Kiper. Guys, thank you so much for making time and being a part of this call. I think this is going to be a lot of fun, and there's some amazing people on this call that I'd love to have a conversation with as well at a different time. So looking forward to this. I will say to those who are on the call with us here, you can be thinking through as we jump into the topic of really, navigating this tension between results driven and people focused, and how that plays out in everyday life of two really incredible leaders and executives. You may have some questions, you may have some thoughts, some comments. This is going to be a conversation. And so, but that's where we're headed, right? How to balance this pursuit, this relentless pursuit of results with this need to prioritize people, right? That's so big. It's so important. Guys, thank you again. Why don't you guys really quickly give us an update on what's going on in your world? Brian, I'll kick it to you first and then over to you, Creighton.
So first off, I am a father of two dance daughters. So first of all, I'm spending a lot of money raising daughters and trying to keep current with that. And, it's such an interesting season of life. I mean, the pace for all of us only continues to get faster. But man, I couldn't be more excited. I was in the middle of all the chaos. I'm having a lot of fun. So, as you know, for about 18 months now, I've been leading the global business between Microsoft and Walmart, our largest customer. It's probably about $1 billion business. And it's just daily change. Daily change is the update. But all good, having a lot of fun and getting to do it with a lot of great people.
Man, that's awesome. That's fantastic. That's a great quick update. You're going to hear more from Brian. Creighton, how about you, man? What's going on in your world?
Yeah, well, hey, good morning, everyone. First and foremost, appreciate you taking out some time to get better. I think that's important and lead yourself well. Um, Josh and group, I'm down in the basement of my house right now because that's about as far as I can get away from everyone and have a little bit of silence. But I've got a newborn in the house along with three others. And so our house is full right now. So that's probably the focus right now more than anything. But I work at Walmart, for those who don't know, in merchandising and work with merchants and a lot of other members in the home business. So to Brian's point, really fast-paced environment of another sort, but I'm sure all of you all are feeling some beat around that, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about it in the next hour.
Yeah, congratulations, Creighton. Man, we super grateful that you took some time off of your leave to be in here with us. So I want to jump off with kind of a setting the stage question, and I'll throw this to you first, Creighton. Walmart and Microsoft both are operating in high stakes, very competitive industries. We were talking a little bit about it. It's maybe never been a more competitive season with anybody that's dealing with technology and e-commerce and that whole world. But can you kick us off, share an example of a time when you felt maybe a tension between hitting a critical business target and supporting your team's well-being? How did you approach that challenge?
Yeah. Just a quick comment and at the end of the question. I want you all to know you're living in and working in probably one of the most incredible times in history, whether you know that or not. What's going on technology-wise, what's going around industry-wise, what's going on geopolitically. it's incredible. And I know there are lots of people who have since, you know, left this planet that would love to be living in this day and age. So
Mm.
what an awesome privilege we have to be in this moment. I would tell you that it's a bit of an end all the time when you think about a task that needs results, and then the impact on people. But what I would tell you, and I would emphasize, is that word and I think that's super important for everyone to just make sure they understand. There are situations, unfortunately, where people can be a means to an end. But if you are the leader that's worth following, you make sure it's not an or, it's an and. And so, we had a real uh, recent example with my leadership group where we were trying to work through some long range planning detail, um, trying to hit a deadline around some strategic initiatives that had to be turned over to our executive leadership. And it required some time. And you would like to think that your work week is pretty linear, but there are times where it's not. It's kind of like a farmer, when it's harvest time, and you're going to put some extra time in. And then when you've harvested, you go back and you put some time. But as a leader, I think one of the things with other leaders being really clear on my directs was letting them know, for the next 2 weeks, there's going to be maybe a few days where we're going to have to get in early, or we might leave a little late. And so making sure that they understood the environment we were heading into, make sure that they know with their spouse or their other half, kind of what that looked like to coordinate. And then just individually as a leader, you know who your team are, you know where their drive is, you know what sets their ambition. And so just having discussions so that you know what their RPM is doing. Are they redlining in the moment? Are they flat in the moment? Are they excited about this? Do they need, because their body language will tell you enough, even without asking the question. So I think just being a really empathetic leader, and knowing what their signals are, and then asking for that permission to know what that signal is. But ultimately, like I said, the work, the why we had to do it, what it was. But I think that's what strikes the medium. And then again, there's when there's some finality to it, making sure that everyone has a chance not only to reflect on the accomplishment, but also think through giving time back, so people can kind of replenish and rejuvenate for the next journey ahead.
I love it. I could double click on several things you said. I'm going to wait just a few seconds here. Brian, what are your thoughts on that question?
Man, I'm so in line with Creighton. It's interesting. It's like my answer is when, like you said, find an example or tell you about a time, but in at least from my experience, it's when is it not like that, right? And what I'm having to learn is the more chaotic things get, the calmer we have to get. So when things get more chaotic, when things are getting more disrupted, we're having to kind of coach ourselves and say, okay, now it's time to calm down in the moment. And seriously, it's all the time, every day. In our business, we have weekly deadlines. And I actually get uncomfortable when things aren't chaotic.
Mm.
And to the point to where I'm like, what's wrong? That something is wrong because it's not chaotic right now. There's not a deadline, the energy or the pace. So I think a couple of things to kind of find the way to balance it is I think you've got to love what you do and love who you do it with. I think that's really, really important is to be able to keep up with that disruption that Creighton talked about, being able to keep up with the pace that Creighton talked about. In my 20-year tech career, nothing even compares to the last 15 months of what we've experienced. So I think the other thing is you always have to be looking at the energy level of yourself and the energy level of your team. And I think Creighton touched on that as well, meaning, especially when you're in a team environment, you've got to kind of check the oxygen levels of each other. And you've got to kind of ebb and flow in those chaotic moments to allow, there's going to be times when you've got to be the one driving, early mornings, late nights, step off the field and do the same. Just this week, we had to stay. We had a big proposal due, and we were in the office till 9 o'clock. Two out of 3 nights this week. But when I left, I was really excited because of the people that I was doing it with and the culture that we've built of kind of high expectations and really just an atmosphere of trust. I think the more that you can be authentic with your team and really drive that authenticity, they're going to want to do it with you. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it is it's always chaotic and you've got to find a rhythm within that chaos.
So let me press on something you said, and I think it's fascinating. You said I get uncomfortable when things aren't chaotic, right? And I think that's you as a leader. You sat in that seat long enough, that's where the growth is. But how do you coach your leaders? And what are some things that really drive your decisions with people in those times when chaos might be at a peak, right? Like the elements are hitting, unexpected, deadlines are approaching. How are you coaching your teammates?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, two things come to mind. So, first off, I think as a leader, it starts with you, right? If you walk around stressed or negative or reacting negative in that chaos, others are going to follow suit. So I think it's important that you know as the leader that you set the tone. There's a great show. I was speaking to the Bentonville seniors this week on the word grit, and I showed them the video from the Facing the Giants movie, The Death Crawl, where
Nice.
the main guy on the team, the captain, says the team we're going to play is going to crush us this week. They're bigger, they're faster, and he says to him, he says, if you walk around defeated, everyone else around you is going to do the same way. So I think, first off, it starts with you and you setting the tone. I think kind of the second thing is this whole concept that I've really fallen in love with is surrender the outcome. Meaning, we've heard the acronym false evidence appearing, real.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever we're working on or environment, I think if you can surrender the outcome of what the worst thing that's going to happen, once you kind of get comfortable with that and then work backwards and play offense, you can play a lot more freely. Josh, you were an athlete. I think, when you can play freely and sit in that, realm of, we're going to leave it all on the field, but we might lose. That is a possibility. But it won't be because we didn't give 110% on this effort. And I think once you set that tone with your team, that if we go all in and we try to create a wow moment for our customers internally or externally, and we don't get the result we wanted, you know what? We're going to be okay. There's actually a quote in front of me, and then I'll pause here. Winston Churchill is one of, outside of Jesus, is probably the most inspirational person in history to me right now. He said that success is not final, failure is not fatal, but it's the courage to continue that counts. So never get comfortable in sitting in your success and your wins, never getting defeated in your failure, but continuing to go on and on.
So good. Creighton, for you, let me throw that question kind of back onto you as well. Like in the chaos of those moments, what does coaching your team look like? What do you intentionally put into play to create a sense of people focused? Does that make sense in light of the
Yeah.
chaos, in light of
Yeah.
the headlines? Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a few things that kind of go through my head quickly. I talk to the leadership group a lot about protecting the rest of the team. And that's usually the first thing that comes out of my mouth is trying to understand all the way down to the most junior associate. What does that impact going to feel like to them, depending on what ask we have or what turnaround that we've got to build? I think the next thing we talk to, we kind of go back to first principle of why are we doing this and what needs to be done. And there's typically a immediate reordering of priorities or shifting. to get the work done. Um, at Walmart, we're incredibly good at getting things done. We're also, unfortunately, incredibly good at like overloading ourselves, getting those things done, like wearing ourselves out and then like high-fiving each other, right? And that becomes kind of a reinforcing mechanism to the negative, right? And so the discipline of saying no to certain things, or at least not yet, is super important as well. So I think I agree with pieces Brian has sent over. I would just add kind of on my space, we think about downstream impact on people. And then we think through how do we clarify what needs to be done. And we go all the way back to the first principle, why are we doing it? And that typically helps. I would tell you, you know, I have a great leader named Amy. She's not on here, so I won't give a sports analogy. But I will give one that just if you think about think about any pursuit as maybe kind of like a battle, you got to have healthy soldiers, you know.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
it's not like you're not going to get a victory without resources, strategy, and healthy people. And so I think just as a leader, whether you're leading yourselves or you've got a team of one or you've got 100 or 1,000, like um, the when the battle's won when you've got strategic alignment, the resources you need, and you've got healthy soldiers.
Love it. Tim Elmore talks about uh, great leaders are like lightning rods. And, what I hear both of you saying essentially is we absorb some of the chaos so that it doesn't go downstream, it doesn't get out horizontal. Let me ask you both this kind of in light of that, because the assumption is healthy leaders have capacity to absorb chaos, right? So that it doesn't go downstream. Unhealthy leaders probably end up not absorbing, and somebody else is going to absorb the chaos. So how do you guys both pursue health as leaders in order to manage the chaos, absorb it, however you want to word that?
All right, I'll give maybe just 45 seconds and turn it to you. I think there's kind of like a polar way of thinking about it. I think the more outward leader a thinking is, the less prone they are to miss something, the more healthy they're going to be. Now, individually, whether it's taking time to reflect, exercise in the morning and the evening, reading, whatever that thing is that gives you oxygen, you need to do that. But I've just found like when I am inward thinking, I'm not as effective. When I'm outward thinking, it actually in some, non-mathematical way provides more margin because I notice more, I'm aware of more. I can see where the team is gonna struggle with something or where something's gonna impact them in a way that I wouldn't want it to. And then I would just add one thing, and maybe it'll resonate with a few on the call, but you kind of have to be ready to be called out a little bit too. Like there are things I don't let go down to the team. I'm like, I'm gonna get in trouble for that, and I'm okay with it. And you just kind of have to have that attitude sometime. And it's not what I'm not preaching is getting in trouble or disrupting chain of command, but hopefully you kind of see the nuance inside of that, which is like everything can't just go down, and you've got to be that filter and use your judgment to kind of what is it, why is it, when is it, how is it, just to help the team out. So just
It's good.
Yep.
Brian, thoughts on how you intentionally pursue health?
Yeah, well, first off, I don't think that you can fake authenticity, not for very long. So I think one of the things that I found is I'm the same person in the boardroom as I am at home. And that just it's almost like if you always tell the truth, you don't have to remember what you tell people. So I think if you have a consistent kind of, set of values, integrity, the way that you communicate, the way that you lead in love, you can really only lead one of two ways. Truthfully, like I mean, we could debate this for a long time, but you can lead by love or you can lead by fear, right? And both can get you to the same outcome. Leading by love creates sustainability that builds really deep relationships that probably brings more joy in life. Like, you know, Josh, you remember that some of the Tim Elmore stuff, the everything in your life either pours fuel in your tank or takes it
Yep.
away.
Yep.
So first off, I show up as my 100% authentic self in every aspect of my life. That takes less energy to do that because I can be consistent. The second thing I think that you have to do is you have to draw extremely clear boundaries in your life and set the same expectation for your team. I'll give you an example. So I made a commitment to my family. When we go on vacation, I do not look at email. I do not look at my IMs. I don't join meetings because that's my family time and I'm showing honor to my family. And if I try to, there's a fallacy out there that I've talked to a lot of leaders and they say they get up early, they check their emails in the morning and, you know, so they can stay caught up. And then when their family wakes up, they're with their family. But the problem with that is the entire time you're laying on the beach, you're thinking about work. So I'm about to go away for spring break. I've already told my team, I've set the expectation, you will not reach me. I don't care how big the deal is. I don't care how big the escalation is. You're not going to find me. I have a team. There's a reason why we're called a team. But I'm going to come back more filled up. Same thing. I take my daughter to school every single morning. Unless I'm on an airplane, I take my daughter to school every morning. My team knows the values that I have, whether it's faith, family, whatever, and I don't make sacrifices on those boundaries. I think creating that balance will help you feel more oxygen, have the oxygen. And the last thing I'll say, kind of that leading by love, I don't think I'll ever write a book, but if I do, it'll be titled, You Don't Have to Be a Jerk to Win. You can get extraordinarily great results by loving people and leading in love and being your authentic self everywhere you show up. And the other thing too with that is you're going to create a team that will dig in through the hard times because you've shown them that love and your authentic self along the way.
That's so good. Both of you have mentioned in story, you know, communicating either to your team or to your family when you need to be more results focused or when you need to be more people focused. How did you guys? I mean, how do you grow in communication? What are the elements there? What are the factors that have helped you grow in your communication? And are there any tips for other leaders on this call on how to do that well? Does that make sense? Brian, jump in.
I'll let you start, bro.
Okay, jump in, Creighton.
Um, I mean, you know, the first statement was just please do. I think
Please
I
do.
think the start
Please
I think
communicate.
the start to communication is like I think there are people who don't speak at all and the extremes, and there are people who don't and then speak too much. And either way, nothing is being transmitted to the audience. You know, I was taught relatively early in a career, it's not what you say, it's what they hear. And using that filter of how do I want them to feel when they walk away? What do I want them to remember? What are they writing down on their notepad? I kind of start with the end in mind in communication. And so you know, whether it's written or oral or just a verbal communication, one to one, it usually kind of follows that format. And then I try and always make it a two-way street. I think as often as you can, as often as I can, hearing back from the audience or the individual, either just to see if they understood what I was trying to communicate. Because I find out I mean, I would say that 50% of the time there's some level of a misinterpretation. So always allowing that, and then it also you know, I want to hear how they're thinking about the matter and what feedback that I might have missed. So just a little bit of kind of how I think through communication. But Brian, what would you add?
I'm gonna go old school. Um, I am a huge fan of having a conversation. Um, I pick up the phone, right? I don't do much email. My team gets very little email from me. Um, I think there's a couple of things that are just in my head. First off, I prefer to have a conversation with someone because we like I was thinking about this, and Josh, I think in one of the last forums we had, I think when I sat down and counted, I think there's 7 different channels you can communicate with me in my life, between Gmail, between Microsoft's Outlook, between Teams, between email, between all of these things. So I think prioritizing what we're doing now is having a conversation is really
Mhm.
meaningful. I think that's thing number one. I think the other thing when creating healthy communication and healthy chemistry is I don't have a lot of toleration for when I get input about other people on my team within the organization. I have very little tolerance for that. My immediate response is, have you had a conversation with that person directly? And have you guys really tried to resolve, any type of tension or whatever, just from a communication perspective? Because I really don't want to give feedback and I don't want to give life to false narratives.
Mm.
Another thing that I'll say a lot too is facts versus feelings.
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of times we communicate in feelings and emotions of things that we've heard secondhand or third hand. They gain life, and then they take on life. So we really try to separate what we know to be factually true versus things that we may feel. And it's okay to have feelings. That's not the takeaway, but make sure we're clear which is which. Um, so I think those things are really critical. I think the other thing that we've worked really hard on this year, and Creighton's talked a little bit about it, is activity and impact aren't equal, right? Is often we think when we're really busy, that activity makes us feel productive. But right now, given the amount of things that we have to get done, we have to have clarity on what drives prioritization and what drives impact. And then we have to let the things that fall that don't drive impact, even if we feel like they have to get done. So I think communicating one to one, allowing others to resolve their conflict resolution, and thirdly is to really be clear on the prioritization and impact. There's probably 100 projects we're working on right now between Walmart. 5 is what we're spending about 95% of our time on, because
Mm.
those are the ones that are like must win, must things we have to get
Mhm.
done.
I love it. I'm gonna pause right here, just kind of addressing everybody so that there's some tactical and practical walkaways. But as a coaching point, what is potentially and perhaps a hard conversation or a piece of communication that needs to happen either with your team or within your family or with your wife, with your husband? Just kind of want to throw that out as, hey, contemplate that in light of what they're saying. That way it doesn't just become information. The last thing that any of us need is just more information, right? I want this to be practical. I want it to be life-giving. And in the next 7 days, whatever you come up with, like what conversation needs to happen in the next 7 days so that you can push play on something there, and really see some results. Okay. Preston, I want to give you a chance to hop in here really quick. You threw a question on the. I'm going to unmute you, I think, or you'll have to unmute yourself, I think. When you ask that question, how do you determine what to filter? Clarify that for me and ask that to these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. That was uh, Creighton was answering one of the previous questions, and he was going into detail about where, as a leader, he would step in to filter for his team and potentially put himself at risk with maybe his own management. I wanted
Mm.
to understand maybe a little bit more like your thought process, Creighton, and how you determine what are those important areas to put yourself basically out on the line in favor of ensuring that your team was continuing to perform.
In the Walmart space, and in home and merchandising, the construct for me, whether it's there or anywhere else, is like you start with, where do I have support from the company? Like, where do I have support? And I say that out loud to just say, they expect this of me, they expect this of me, they expect this of me. It's not a whole bunch. It's like, treat people well, operate a business with integrity, and drive performance results. Like just boil it down to like super simple things. And then I go and I look at our strategy and I say, well, we're trying to do this, this, and this. It's like 5 things we're trying to do. So you kind of have like this matrix of things. And so whenever I see something, I say, well, is it going to help me get one of these 5 things done, or help the company get one of these 5 things done? So, Brian calls it activity versus impact. I call it motion versus movement. Like one is just I'm doing stuff. One is like I'm getting from point A to point B. We want point A to point B type work. And then when it's not, then I'll go back to the things the company expects of me and says, and am I in violation of any of these things? And if the answer is no, then it becomes a candidate for this actually isn't going to make the list of the 100 because I'm trying to keep it to 10 to begin with. And there are times where I can, most of the time, respectfully go back to leadership as a one-to-one, say, hey, like, tell me a little bit more about why, and let me tell you what I'm thinking. And then there are times where I have to make the judgment call and ask for forgiveness versus ask for permission. But we, despite someone's best intent, you still have to apply a fine-tooth comb to direction and activity that you're getting, because to Brian's point, it's not always impact.
So good. Yeah. I want to jump into because I think sometimes it can feel like the biased in corporate America, in particular with big, Fortune 100 companies that are driving results and big money and billion-dollar business, and there's a bias towards results, and there's not much flexibility. But I'll say it like this: the younger workforce that's entering the workforce, Gen Z, some of the younger millennials, seems like the demand there is flexibility and purpose and space, and I want to work from home and this and that. But how do you balance those realities and expectations of the younger generation coming into the workforce with this pressure to deliver consistent outcomes? Brian, why don't you jump into that one first?
Yeah. So first off, I'll think of a story. So before I was at Microsoft, I was the chief revenue officer of a Series A venture capital backed startup. It was a supply chain automation company. If you've never worked in true entrepreneurship or startup, I mean, this was like early stage, like scary stuff. And I went to work for a 25-year-old female founder, Forbes 30 under 30, Charu Thomas, who is the top graduating engineer from Georgia Tech. And I remember going in, I've always wanted to get that entrepreneurial experience. And I remember walking in thinking, oh my gosh, they're going to learn so much from me because I'm this, gray-haired, wise guy. And in reality, is I learned probably more from them than they did me. In reality, we learned a lot from each other. And I think what I would say to that is I think there's good in balance and flexibility, but at the same time, you've got to hold a standard of high expectations and high output, right? We are in for-profit businesses. So, once I learned that, there is also still no substitute for people being together in person. Companies over pivoted during COVID. What you saw is like my team is extraordinarily distributed. I've got people in China, Mexico, almost every big city in America, and it makes progress so much more difficult virtually than when we're in person. So I think we've tried to create set expectations of like if I want you in town this much a week, and we're going to be in the office during these times. And it's going to still create family time and balance, but we've had to kind of undo that over rotation. You're seeing Walmart do the same, everyone back to the office. It's not just because they built this big, beautiful corporate real estate. the reality is we will move faster together when we're working in person together. And I'll touch on kind of several of the things that we've hit on that I think plays to this thread is I'll just give you a real example is we're working a AI proposal right now that's time sensitive, it's complex, it's got a lot of tension around it, and our deadline is today. And yesterday I walked in with the team and it was just underwhelming. Just to be very candid, it was underwhelming, and I had a moment of how do I put oxygen in the team and bring them along without defeating them, but still get to a result that we've got to deliver. And we had to have a hard, honest conversation. And I am more of a player coach type leader. Is I'm going to sit in there with you versus just ask you to do something. If I'm not willing to do it, I'm not going to ask you to do it. So we rolled up our sleeves and we went through kind of the frozen middle messiness of it, but we did it together. And what came out a few hours later was this amazing proposal that had we not sat in that really hard tension of this is not where it needs to be, it's not good, it's not the results this team is. So I think again, setting those expectations, but you leading with the actions of you're doing it yourself as well. So sorry if I jumped around a little bit. I probably combined a couple of things.
All right. That's so good. So good. Creighton, you want to jump in on that one as well?
I mean, just quickly, whether we've got some Gen Zs on the call or you've got a team full of them, just think about like we were designed to gather around each other, like social community things of that nature. And so just understand that like the root nature of us all, like being around another individual is super important. I think in a corporation, you know, trying to get faster decisions, better quality of decisions. I would even add teaching and training, because this cohort is 2, 3, 4 years out of college. Like these are sometimes their first jobs, like not only just getting up to speed and on board, but like even their next move, which as a leader, sometimes I use that against them. And I say like, how's your networking going? You probably need to be in the office, you know? How do you know how this job works if this is what the next thing you want to do? And so even sometimes I use opportunistic thinking, but flexibility. You know, Brian and I share take the daughter to school in the morning. Like I don't want anyone to miss donuts with mom or feel pressured not to go watch a kid in choir or anything like that. Like that's where technology should enable the logistics of like actually like work-life balance or integration or whatever fancy cliche you want to use. But there's a why behind physical proximity. And it's proven itself. Like all of us had to go through the hardness of working remote during COVID 2020 and 2021. I don't think many of us would raise our hand and say we want to do that again. But we have to be careful not to over pivot to the other side. So I think there's something around culture and training and upskilling and just being a better team, because corporate is teamwork. Like it truly is teamwork. And then I would just say like, again, we live in such an interesting time where there's more cohorts in the workplace than ever before. You've got Gen Z, millennial, boomer, Gen X, all in the same workforce. Like what an amazing time to like learn and have future and history on the same team to just make better, faster, higher quality decisions. So that's another reason why physical proximity matters.
I love that phrase, having future and history on the same team. That's powerful. So, okay, I'm going to ask one more question to you guys. If y'all, any of the collective members have a question here, just go ahead and put that in the chat, and we'll take a few minutes and get to those. But I want to ask you guys, as industry evolves, and I think that's in every area of the world right now. I think everything is shifting. We are in a pivotal moment of history, not so unlike the advent of the internet in the mid 90s. What do you see as the next big challenge in aligning results in people, and what are you doing to prepare for it?
I'm gonna go first. So Brian's gonna have a fantastic answer, and I don't want to go after. I don't want to go after him. So you guys can see some of my vulnerability as the tech guy. I try and just give you 2 minutes of a thread of thought. I want you all to realize, like, this isn't like the internet. This is actually like electricity showing up to the world. AI is like electricity showing up to the world. I'm gonna repeat myself. And what we sometimes tend to do is we overestimate in the short term and we underestimate in the long term. And so when Edison or Tesla or the gentleman that came up with the carbon filaments that go in a light bulb, when all of them did that, it was groundbreaking, but it did take time. You had to build power centers, then homes had to start being electrified, and then manufacturing facilities had to start being electrified, and now everything's electrified. You see this pattern coming? Like a general purpose technology is built, then data centers have to be built, and then everything starts to run on them. But it's going to fundamentally change it. And so I just kind of want to reemphasize, like, it's not even just the internet. Like, I would go further back into history. It's like when electricity was created for humankind, and just imagine how pivotal that is and how we use it today. And so as I think about general purpose technologies and leaders here, you have the opportunity to become very efficient, a lot more knowledge base coming in at you, which means, Preston, like, you even have to have sub filters on filters, because we're exposed to more information than we ever have at any point in life. And I don't know how much our brain can actually, like, compute. But we want to be on top of that. We want to model behaviors. We want to model usage of these technologies. But I would challenge the leaders in this group. 60 years, 50 years, 100, 120 years ago, there were futurists that thought about how all this technology would improve life and would give time back. I mean, I want you all to think about it. 100 years ago, 120 years ago, it would take you 2 days to get down to Fort Smith. Now it takes you 45 minutes. What are you doing with that time? What are your teams doing with that time? How do you balance the efficiency and the speed of technology that's coming with the humanity that is your team, that is yourself, that is your family, that is your community? And being an early adopter and all those things and learning is super important as a leader. So that's just a bit of what I would leave on this group. It's something that goes through my head more than some of the individuals that I get to lead would expect, but it's because I understand just a little bit what's going on, what's transforming, and what's happening. And I just want everyone that I'm responsible for to be prepared for it and curious about it. So I'll stop there, and I'm gonna take notes on Brian's answer.
Yeah, me too.
Vulnerability is good for you, Creighton. It suits you well, I guess. I'm going to actually take a page out of the Walmart book, surprisingly, Creighton. They've got a narrative called People Led and Tech Powered. And, what's interesting is I went through the revolution of cloud coming, and then I went through all of these different, I think we're in the fourth generation of evolution of technologies, as they say it. And ultimately, like, last year was about talk and buzz. This year is about action. I was actually reading a study, I think it was like in the Harvard Business Review. They were talking about how many executives are actually talking about AI, but the reality of how many are using it, the results are staggering. It's very, very low, but they're claiming to know about it, use it, and the reality is there's a lot of posers. And myself being one of them. But what I would say is that train has left the station. But I think how we control the narrative on leveraging technology is really, really critical right now. And I'll give you an example. So we have this thing called Copilot. You guys probably use it. It's the most advanced, arguably personal assistant, in AI right now. And I got asked to speak to all of the top nonprofit CEOs in the Midwest on how to leverage technology and how is AI going to impact nonprofits. And just very candidly, I showed up. I realized I was speaking. I'd forgotten about it on my calendar, and I didn't realize I was speaking until the day before I was flying home from Seattle. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to speak for an hour on stage in front of 600 or 700 people about this that I'm not prepared for. So I leveraged technology, and that morning I went to Copilot and I built a PowerPoint presentation in 90 seconds. 90 seconds, built a 20 slide presentation in 90 seconds on tech for social impact, on how is technology going to impact nonprofits, whatever, et cetera. And then I spent 3 hours preparing that morning, thinking deeply about it. So what I did is I leveraged the technology to do the work that was mundane, that was not helpful, that was not value add. And then I really spent time reflecting on how I wanted to talk to the folks and speak to the folks and also show how easy it was. And the punchline at the end of the presentation is I told them I built that presentation this morning, and that's how easy this technology is to use. And then I actually demoed it and did prompting live, and I was a rookie. So I think the more you embrace the technology, the easier you're going to find that it is. But it also, what I'm finding now is I have way more time available to do this
Yeah.
because I'm so much more efficient in how I work. So I think the sooner that you adopt it, be curious and embrace it for the outcome of spending more time together with your people, it's a game changer.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I love that, Brian, and the way you synthesized that was obviously from a lot of experience and very accessible for all of us. I appreciate that. Well, I'm going to do this for the sake of our time because I promised we're going to be done by 11:55. So here's 3 things I just want to throw at you really quickly. 3 questions. Number 1, what is one conversation that you need to push play on in the next 7 days? Where do you need to communicate? All right, that's one takeaway that's perhaps helpful for you. 2, what is just one takeaway that you want to put to work for you in the next few days? Just kind of taking away from this conversation. And then number 3, really zeroes in on this last part of the conversation. How are you pivoting with AI, and what practical step do you need to take to grow in your understanding of that? So maybe those are helpful just to really zero in, focus in on a takeaway for you. And Brian, Creighton, you guys are just worth your weight in gold and wisdom. And honestly, our friendship, man, is a treasure to me. So thank you guys for making time. I hear Creighton talk a lot about using AI in order to win back time, but not so that you can do more work for the business, but so that you can do more things that matter. Not that doesn't matter. That's a part of it, but it's like, it's this holistic life, right? And you heard him express that in his trip down to Fort Smith, heartbeat. And I love that about your heart as a leader. And Brian, hearing you say what you just said, this makes time for things like this. So I do appreciate you guys. It's so valuable for the collective. And I can't wait to have you guys back live with us on stage, speaking, communicating. We need to make that happen again. So, but everybody, thank you so much for making time to be a part of this. This will be available in a recording. I'll put it out in an email to all of you so that you can review it, send it, whatever you want to do. But I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your Friday. All right. Thank you guys. Really
Thanks for hosting, Josh.
Thanks, guys. All right. Bye.